The Chinese fishing nets, centuries-old spice warehouses, ancient centers of worship, and colonial bungalows lining the cobbled streets of Fort Kochi and Mattancherry all speak of a bygone era. However, from December 12th to April 10th next year, the streets, warehouses, and old villas will turn into galleries of astounding art with installations by more than 90 artists from around the world as part of the 5th Kochi-Muziris Biennale, which was launched in 2012. But why have an art festival here in this dilapidated old trade center lying on the fringes of a modern metro city? Co-founder of Kochi-Muziris Biennale, Bose Krishnamachari, says Kochi was the obvious choice of venue when the idea for India's first Biennale was mooted more than a decade ago.
This location got a character, this architectural space, a heritage spaces, the ornaments, and that and the spice trade, given so much of layers of history, layers of culture had come from different part of the world, and that confluence and that melting pot of that cosmopolitanism is given confidence to the projects.
As a contemporary artist and curator, he feels that Fort Kochi and Mattancherry provide the perfect setting for creative city making, a process of making creative urban spaces for people and community to practice or be inspired by art. But what is so unique about this region? The history of this land lying at the mouth of the Cochin harbour goes back to well beyond the colonial era. It is believed that the harbour was naturally formed after the great flooding of Periyar River in 1341 AD. While the disaster created the conditions for a new trade centre in Cochin, it is also believed to have destroyed the mythical port city of Muziris, located some 30 kilometers north of the present-day Kochi. Later, in 1503, the Portuguese built Fort Emmanuel that gave Fort Kochi its name. But it was subsequently conquered by the Dutch in 1663 and by the British in 1790. Author and art curator Tanya Abraham, who was born and brought up in Fort Kochi, says her hometown has a unique spot in the history of Kerala.
When you talk about the history of Fort Kochi and Mattancherry, it's a place which has brought cultures from foreign lands. They plied their way to the land, which is very unique. I mean, we have other places like that in Kerala where there was trade, but in terms of so many different communities settling down and having lasted all these generations because of their food culture and their religious traditions and all of that continuing to last makes Fort Kochi extremely special.
As a physical space for art, Tanya thinks every single aspect of Fort Kochi and Mattancherry is unique. From the diverse architecture to the colors of buildings, there is an unsaid enigma in the air due to the different communities that have been living here since time immemorial. And how does this cosmopolitanism contribute to art? Shubhagi Rao, the curator of this edition of Kochi-Muziris Biennale, says the existence of Kochi and Muziris puts to rest the notion that cosmopolitanism is a product of colonialism and colonial trade.
So this cosmopolitanism is not the ability to eat exotic food or wear clothing from another place, from another culture. It's not only that. It's actually much more interestingly the exchange of ideas and the spread of belief systems and all of that. So there's a lot of that multiplicity, if I may use an overused word, in this region. And I think it puts paid quite firmly to the idea that everything originated from Europe, because it's always been like this here. I mean, there's been this The Malabar coast has looked to the world, it hasn't looked inwards.
So, this time she wants to bring together ideas from colonial and most importantly pre-colonial times to dispel this myth and show that discourse between places like Kochi and regions around the world have always existed.
For instance, the works by Vivan Sundaram that I've chosen are works he did decades ago when he first traveled to Latin America. And I want to just remind people that if I talk about, discourse in the global south between say South America and South Asia, I'm not doing anything new. There's a legacy, there's a history here, and this is just one example of it in Vivan's work, for instance.